I am not the brightest person. I am not the brightest person. I am not the brightest person.
How dare you?
Hi, and welcome to the Last Ward 13 show. That doesn't mean we won't be back next week, but we'll be under a different name. Since I'm writing a book called We Pick Your President, because I've covered New Hampshire primary. Geez, well, first one I remember, 68, 72, but I didn't cover it till 2008 and 12 and 16 and 2020. Used to do it for Yahoo News, then just as a freelance. It's funny, I was just telling Brendan, my director, I'm going to change the title to WPYP TV Manchester, which, because We Pick Your President is such a ponderous title. Now, my beloved laptop, which is like from 2012, yeah, I had it, I covered, I think it's 2011, I covered quite a few political events, including primaries and elections with that. It was a Dell XPS. And Windows 7, oh, I love Windows 7, refused to upgrade. And, of course, it hasn't been supported for over a year now. And I was writing like mad this weekend. And then all of a sudden, it just, something was wrong. And there's no way to go on to the site, Microsoft site, because the only software they'll support is 8.1 and above. And because they want you to have Windows 10, of course. And I am just a Luddite. The Luddites were anti-technologists, I guess we'd call them now, in England and during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, that used to go around destroying the factories that were creating said Industrial Revolution, because it was destroying the lives they knew and making them wage slaves in all but name and legality. Of course, they could, if they had the gumption, get on a boat and come to North America or other places, Australia, I guess. How many of them were just prisoners, just like many of the white people, Europeans, English. That's so silly, using the term white. Because when you're talking about North America, it was the part we're talking about. It was the three groups of English, French, and Spanish. And a lot of the English colonists some of them came here as prisoners or as indentured servants for 5 to 7 years. Everybody talks about, well, they don't they don't teach slavery at school. They certainly taught it to us in the 60s and 70s in Manchester. So I think there's a lot of hyperbole there. But Luddites. I am a Luddite. I stick to my Windows 7 computer, and it's failed me, folks. So I have to write by hand. So I went and grabbed an old notebook, pull it out, and start writing. And then I look at the cover. I'm not going to have you zoom in, but it's called The Trump Parade, or We Pick Your President, from 2017. So I guess, that is the title. That's the title of my book. And that's kind of like a thumbs up from the various gods, if not the muse herself. So, hey, we have a little bit about Victoria Sullivan there. I just want to say something, folks. If you have heating oil, if you're heating your house with heating oil, and if you're at a half, your tank's at a half, it's time to order your oil. It's not being picked up by the news right now, except outside of Maine, but there's major disruptions in heating oil. I called my company, And they said they can't. They can only schedule starting the week of February 7th. That's 12 days away. And if you stick to, the standard was when you get down to a quarter tank of oil, you order it. Unfortunately, with my problems with memory and everything, last week I checked, it was about a quarter. Now it's at 8, and I'm thinking, holy Hannah. So I called them up and found out that they're really scheduling it out, and so everybody. My sister had ordered oil, and it took 4 days instead of it's usually most 2 days when you get oil. But now there are supply disruptions. One of them is that people can't hire drivers, apparently. But I have a lot more to say about this situation, but not here. I don't want to trigger my PTSD, because let's forget about that. My other big is Citizens Bank. Oh my God, how they love to give you fees. That's a whole show in itself. But we'll forget about that. Hey, Brendan, can you put up the, what's it called? The stick in the mud. Yes, here we go. Stick in the mud is someone who's old-fashioned or unprogressive, especially one who's intellectually dull. Synonyms are antediluvian, dodo, fossil, FUD. FUD, I love that because Mad Magazine used to use it all the time. FUD, fuddy-duddy, a fuss budget, which Lucy Van Pelt of the Charlie Brown Peanuts. I always think of it as Charlie Brown, my greatest hero, I still identify with. And various other names, but we just faded away. Hey, do we have that Charlie Brown? You're thinking of Charlie Brown. Or did I send that to you? Is it called Charlie Brown or Charlie? I know that on my computer it has a different name that's obscene. Perhaps I didn't send it to you.
I don't see it.
Thank God, because I had to censor it. But maybe next week we'll be able to show it. Charlie Brown sitting between President Trump and Chris Sununu. But, since I brought it up about the stick in the mud, we're going to talk a little bit about Victoria Sullivan. Oh, my, people told me, oh, Hoppy, you've got to come in on, this social group, that social group. And Victoria Sullivan is doing her thing about she's being a social media warrior. Wouldn't you know it? My Facebook online is no longer. Where the hell is it? Yeah, I'm a real Luddite, folks. Nothing's working right now. What are they trying to do to me? I was on. My Facebook account's not coming up. Okay. And Victoria Sullivan is going at it again. I was going to go on and share, here we go, some of the stuff from one of the sites. Last week I talked about Victoria Sullivan, and I said I believe that, maybe I did or maybe I didn't. I know I was talking about her. I might have just written about it. But I believe that Victoria Sullivan, this is just an opinion, folks, just an opinion. And as I said last week, I'm not a psychologist. I've read psychology texts like Freud, Jung, and others. How could you not if you want to be an educated person? But I probably took just one, Psych 101 at university. I'm not a psychologist. This is all just, speculation, opinion. And part of the opinion I have of Victoria Sullivan is that she suffers from what Jung, the great Swiss psychologist who was close to Freud for many years, would have called ego inflation. What is ego inflation, you might ask? Well, in my non-technical way, my interpretation of it, ego inflation would be best illustrated by a something that D.H. Lawrence, the great English writer who came out of the working class. If you've read Sons and Lovers, which I did back at West High School back in the mid-70s, D.H. Lawrence wrote a book called The Apocalypse, because amongst the working class people that he came up with, was born into that class, and it's particularly true amongst like the Welsh of the time. We're talking about the turn of the last century, because the Welsh were not Church of England, or we'd call Anglican adherents. They were they would go to chapel, frequently Baptist, but non-Church of England. They would call that Low Church. And amongst the Welsh and amongst many working people, when they would go to a chapel or to church, there was a lot of appeal to them of a Messianic type of thinking. And Lawrence wrote a book, very short book called The Apocalypse, which was quite fascinating. And he pulling from him about the psychology of these working people, these people that were just brutally exploited, like miners and workers before World War II in England or the United States. We have a call coming in, but hello?
Yes, I'm calling in to be a guest on Ward 13.
Well, you're about 10 minutes early.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
Could you call in 10 minutes, and then we'll be ready for you, Eric?
Oh, okay. I apologize, John. I'm sorry. I'll call in 10 minutes.
But 10 minutes, I'm counting on you, or I'm just going to be boring the entire state of New Hampshire. I'm talking about D.H. Lawrence and the Apocalypse and how it applies to local politics here in Manchester. So you have to call in. I'm praying that you do again.
I will call in 10 minutes then and save the people.
Right. Well, we'll go from the Apocalypse to Apocalypse Now, okay?
Perfect.
10 minutes. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Well, Lawrence wrote about what these people that the apocalypse, this evangelical type of mindset appeals to them. They want to sit on the right knee of God, right on the right knee of God Himself, and pass judgment on people. And of course, you get your jollies when you're an apocalyptic evangelical, condemning people, along with the big man himself. The problem with that scenario and that mindset, and this is the real ego inflation, is that you just don't think of yourself as, this humble person, a Rich Gerard type, humble Rich Gerard, sitting on the knee of God. You start thinking you are God Himself, and that is ego inflation. Because when you follow the career of Victoria Sullivan here in Manchester and her continuing political antics, I believe that you're looking at a person that suffers from ego inflation. She is fancying herself as a messiah. She's a messiah from Manchester, the Queen City. And she just doesn't want to be the empress, the queen or the empress. It's a messianic complex. The way she talks about things in her campaign announcement for running for alderman from Ward 9 to replace the late, great Barbara Shaw. And, of course, on her site, it's Victoria Sullivan, alderman of Ward 9, just like she was Victoria Sullivan, mayor of Manchester. Talk about egotism and projection. I mean, that's signaling about the mindset of the person. I mean, she talks about how she is going to come in, into City Hall. Of course, there's no City Hall in this. I don't know why. It's like I think I'm looking out the window because I have it on my side too. She's going to go to City Hall and she's going to enact her homelessness plan, her plan for the homeless. And because only Victoria Sullivan can save the homeless, only she can redeem them from the, I would like to use obscenity, but actually scatological, but I won't, from the perilous state they find themselves in. Only she can do that. That Bill Barry has been working on this for many years. Pat Long has been working on this for many years. Our great friend and a staple of Manchester Public TV, Glenn R.J. Ouellette, the People's Mayor, that he's been working. Glenn R.J. Ouellette has actually done a great deal to help homeless people. And he helped, the aldermen went down to Cambridge to see how they did things. I mean, Bill Barry, Pat Long, other people, they've been working on this issue hands-on for years. It's not simple, folks. It's not simple, folks, when they dump. Joe Lavassa is right. Every town and city, Nashua, sends their people here to Manchester. That's true in any state. The big city, absorbs people. But New Hampshire, rather than other states, they just, it's like, to you, Manchester. And I've been told that, all my political life. Up at the Clown College in Concord, everybody just wants to take a dump on Manchester. Just like before 9/11, everybody in the whole United States hated New York City. Just the way it was. And but we have a Messiah that's going to come in here and metaphorically raise the dead. It's like nobody in this city has ever done a damn thing. Not a damn thing at all, have they? But we have the Messiah, Victoria Sullivan, is going to come and redeem us all. I mean, it is really beyond belief. It reminds me of what's called the little man syndrome. Because, I spent my college years at Boston University, had the best political science faculty of its time. Had Howard Zinn and other great professors. And people would be studying both the rise of fascism and Nazism, which is a form of it, and of the Soviet system, because which is socialism, you could say, and communism, but as they're both totalitarian systems. These are systems that went beyond the pale, and people wanted to understand how it happened. How did it happen? Because you just can't say it's anti-Semitism that caused the Shoah, or we call the Holocaust, and the Shoah, which was the destruction of European Jewry. It's just not anti-Semitism in Germany, because if you were going to pick in the year 1900 and 1910, what country would have a Holocaust, a Shoah, you'd pick France. France was far more notorious for its institutional anti-Semitism than Germany. German Jews were more established in Germany, yet it happened. And how did the fascism, how did people just get the Germans? And there were fascists in France. There were fascists in the 30s. There was the Alliance Française, which was fascist. There were fascist organizations in Quebec. There was fascist organizations right here in the United States. The German-American Boon, the Silver Shirts. And we studied that, and there was a concept called the little man. We're talking about, once again, a little man. In this sense, it was more of like a lower middle class type of person, a shopkeeper, somebody that was just devastated, like in Germany and other countries, by the World War and the inflation, and then you had the Great Depression. And what fascism, what the big man like a Mussolini or Hitler allows them is to identify, self-identify, and it boosts their ego. The little man and his or her attraction to fascism and the fascism of the big man, another concept we studied. Hitler was very popular amongst women in Germany. It's hard to believe that Adolf Hitler was a sex pot, but like David Bowie said around 1975 or 76 in a Playboy interview, which has been quoted by academics, Hitler was the first rock star. But he staged a whole nation rather than just, like a show in Shea Stadium or something. Although he had his stadium shows, didn't he? And we see that with Trump. And it's, Trump to me, you just look at Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon and whatever they were, the evil they did far outweighs whatever Trump did because they were highly competent and intelligent people. They just had, let themselves into the dark side, like Shakespeare's Richard III. Trump was just, let's not get into Dear Donald Trump, the Trump parade, or we pick your president. But I just see a lot of, you saw with Trump and the people that just started worshiping this SOB, you just saw the little man, little woman, little person syndrome, where they are going to find their self-worth through this authoritarian demigod. Rather than being God, finding God in the chapel, you find the demigod Trump or Hitler, Trump on TV, or you could go to one of his rallies. And Hitler, who came to power, the supreme power in 1933, the same year as Franklin D. Roosevelt, his great nemesis, who destroyed him, they both were masters of the radio and the Nazi Germany, but just incredible, their mastery of the mass media. That was these were the first two nations, that the United States and Germany, that perfected mass media. But I think with Victoria Sullivan, where they're messianic, this is just an opinion, where they're messianism, I think that's what we have here, because this is a perpetual candidate. I think here's a person, as I said the other week, that, she just basically takes a dump on Manchester and its institutions. She came from somewhere else, and as many people have said to me, if you don't like it, why don't you leave? Why would you leave when you can save the friggin' place? Okay.